3 monitors glow in the darkness like windows into 3 different worlds, and Rafael Rossi watches them all at once with the patience of a man who has spent 30 years learning that silence reveals everything. The office above the underground poker room smells like aged leather and Cuban cigars, and the smoke hangs in the air so thick it looks like it could hold a shape if you pressed your hand against it. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, New York City glitters and pulses at 11 o'clock at night, indifferent to the calculations happening in this room. Rafael is 58 years old, dark hair silvered at the temples, built like a man who still trains every morning at 5 despite his age. A scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, thin and pale, a souvenir from his brother's betrayal 20 years ago. He wears a charcoal suit that costs more than most people earn in 2 months, and a gold Rolex sits heavy on his wrist like a weight he has grown so accustomed to carrying that he would feel lighter without it, and therefore wrong. On the left monitor, Cassandra Rivera appears. 28 years old, dark hair pulled into a tired knot, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone screen as she sits in the back seat of a yellow taxi moving through the Lower East Side. She is texting someone. Her thumbs move quickly, then stop. Then move again. She is afraid the message is wrong. Rafael can tell because he has spent 3 weeks watching her on these monitors, studying the way she hesitates before sending anything, the way she glances toward the front seat to make sure the driver is not watching. In 3 weeks of surveillance, she has left her apartment 14 times. Every time, manila folders. Every time, the same coffee shop on 5th Avenue where men in charcoal suits sit at corner tables and pretend to read newspapers. Every time, the federal courthouse. The federal courthouse. The center monitor shows the poker room 2 floors below. 12 men in tailored suits bent over green felt, stacks of chips worth more than houses, cigars burning like small disasters in the corners of their mouths. This is business. This is how Rafael has moved money, information, and power through New York for 3 decades. No one enters this room without his permission. No one leaves richer than they came in unless he allows it. The right monitor is still playing footage from this morning. Cassandra Rivera, standing outside St. Mary's Hospital with folders pressed against her chest. She met a man there. Tall, early 50s, sharp jaw, the bearing of a federal prosecutor or an FBI agent. Rafael has people who recognize faces. This man's name is Detective Harrison Cross. He works for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He investigates organized crime. Sergio stands behind Rafael's chair, a man of 45 with the build of a boxer and eyes that have seen too much to ever be surprised again. Sergio has worked for Rafael for 18 years. He has killed twice. He has collected debts from people who would have preferred death to the meeting with him. His hands are steady. His voice is never loud. He is one of the most dangerous men in New York, and he stands in this room with the posture of a man waiting to hear what he already knows. "Boss," Sergio says, and his voice is deep and flat, like a stone sinking through water. She visited the DA's office again today. 4th time this month. This time she stayed for 90 minutes. Rafael does not move. He does not blink. He watches Cassandra's face on the left monitor, watches her hands as she types another message, watches the way her jaw clenches when she reads the response. She is afraid. That much is clear. But of what? Of whom? "Tell me about her debts," Rafael says. 65,000 in medical bills. Her husband, Marcus Rivera, he died 4 years ago of a heart attack in their apartment. She called the ambulance too late. The hospital fought her on the cause of death. They said negligence. She fought them. It cost her everything. Legal fees, appeals, all of it burned through their savings. After he died, she tried to get life insurance, but his policy had a clause. Pre-existing condition they claimed he did not disclose. They fought her denial for 2 years. She lost. The debts accumulated. Credit cards, personal loans, she borrowed from her mother, from her sister, from everyone she knew. Her mother died last year. Stroke. The bills for that came to her. She is 37 days behind on rent. Rafael turns his head. Just slightly. Just enough to see Sergio's face. And the child, Rafael says. It is not a question. 7 years old. Name is Oliver. Second grade at PS 47. He eats lunch at school 5 days a week because that is the only guaranteed meal he receives on school days. On weekends and nights, his mother stretches out $8 across the entire day. She buys rice, dried beans, sometimes chicken legs from the discount bin. She walks him everywhere. Subway is too expensive most days. He has not been to a doctor in 3 years. His vision is worsening. He squints at the blackboard during lessons. The words come out of Sergio like a catalogue of suffering. Not because he is cruel. Because he is thorough. Because Rafael taught him that mercy requires information, and information requires precision. She came to us looking for work, Sergio continues. 3 months ago. That humid night in August. She heard rumors that security positions opened at the warehouse. She thought maybe $500 a week. She thought that would change everything. She did not know that Anthony Marchetti was waiting outside her apartment building at 7 in the evening. Rafael's jaw tightens. The scar on his cheek seems to pale, to become more visible, like his anger is draining the blood from his own face. Anthony Marchetti. His brother's son. The nephew he has tolerated for too long because blood is blood, and his brother is dead, and there is a weight to legacy that Rafael carries in his chest like a stone. Anthony is 34 years old. He has his father's cruelty and his mother's sense of entitlement, which is a combination that produces something especially vicious in human beings. Anthony has spent 3 years working in Rafael's organization because Rafael gave him the chance his father never had, the chance to take something broken and build it into something useful. But Anthony saw the organization as a toy box. He saw the money as permission to hurt people. He saw himself as untouchable because his uncle built an empire, and therefore he must be exceptional by blood alone. She has a left eye swollen shut, Sergio says. A handprint on her throat. Deep purple, like it came from fingers that meant to squeeze until the sound stopped. Her lip was split in 2 places. She collapsed near the card tables at 7:53 in the evening, bleeding onto the green felt. She was crying but making no sound, the kind of crying that comes when a person has learned that sound itself is useless. Rafael closes his eyes. Behind his eyelids, he sees his mother's face. She died when he was 12 years old. Cancer. She came to him in the hospital 2 days before the end and took his hand and said, "Rafael, you are going to be powerful someday. I do not know how I know this, but I know it. Promise me you will use it to protect the people who cannot protect themselves. Promise me that power will never make you cruel." He made that promise. He kept it for 46 years. He kept it through blood and fire and the deaths of men who deserved it and some who did not. He kept it when his brother betrayed him, when the scar was still new on his face, when rage was the only thing between him and a coffin. He kept it when his empire grew, when his name became a word that made grown men flinch, when his presence in a room caused the temperature to drop like winter had arrived. He kept that promise because his mother died believing he would, and the dead deserve that much at least. Where is she now? Rafael says. Yellow taxi, heading north toward her apartment. She will arrive in approximately 8 minutes. And the child? With a neighbor. Woman named Carmen Santos, 62, lives 3 units away. She watches him 3 nights a week when Cassandra is working at the diner. She gives him dinner. Sometimes it is better than what his mother can afford. Tonight she made rice and beans with chorizo. The boy ate 2 plates. He asked Carmen if the food was expensive. She told him no, it was free, and his face showed relief because he has already learned that expensive food takes from his mother, and he does not want to take from her anymore. Sergio's voice does not change. It remains flat, factual, like he is reading a newspaper aloud. But Rafael knows his lieutenant well enough to understand that beneath the flatness, there is something else. Sergio has a daughter. She is 14. He thinks about other people's children sometimes, and it causes him a particular kind of pain. Rafael stands. He is 6'2", and when he stands, the room seems to become smaller. He walks to the windows. The city spreads out beneath him like a kingdom made of light and ambition and small desperate decisions. Somewhere down there, Cassandra Rivera is riding in a yellow taxi, her phone in her hands, her mind on tomorrow, on how she will make the money last, on whether her son noticed that she is terrified. What decision did she make? Rafael says. With the prosecutor. What did she agree to do? She did not agree to anything. Not today. But she is meeting with him again on Friday. We believe he is recruiting her as an informant. Against whom? Sergio breathes, and the breath sounds heavy in the quiet office. Against you, boss. Against the organization. Against all of us. The words hang in the air like a sentence that has just been read aloud in court. Rafael watches the city. He does not move. His hands are folded in front of him. In 30 seconds, his face will no longer be human. In 30 seconds, calculations will begin. In 30 seconds, a woman he saved 3 weeks ago will become a traitor, and in his world, there is only one response to betrayal. But in this moment, with 5 seconds left before everything changes, Rafael thinks of his mother. He thinks of a promise made to a dying woman. He thinks of a 7-year-old boy eating chorizo with his neighbor and asking if the food was expensive, and the sound of his own voice in the darkness. Bring her to me, Rafael says. When she arrives at her apartment, bring her here. Bring the child as well. And Sergio, understand this, we will find out the truth, but the truth will be found with gentleness, not violence. If she has betrayed me, I will know why. And if there is mercy to be found in any of this, then we will find it together. The office falls silent. The 3 monitors continue their vigil. On the left screen, the yellow taxi turns onto her street. 5 minutes remain before she arrives home. 5 minutes before her life changes in a way she cannot anticipate, in a direction she cannot predict. She does not know yet that the man whose nephew destroyed her body has already decided to save her life. She does not know that Rafael Rossi has just broken a rule he created decades ago. She does not know that in 5 minutes, everything will become impossible to understand, and in understanding it, she will discover that mercy sometimes wears the face of the most dangerous man in New York. Sergio moves to the door. He pauses. Boss, he says. Your mother would be proud. Rafael does not respond. He simply watches the monitors, and waits, and remembers a promise made in a hospital room a long time ago, when he was young and breakable and believed that power could be beautiful if it chose to be. 3 months earlier. August. The kind of humid night that makes the air thick enough to taste, where breathing feels like drinking warm water and the sky hangs so low you could reach up and touch the belly of the clouds. Thunder rumbles somewhere over Manhattan, still distant, still hours away, but coming. Central Park at 9 o'clock at night is a different world. The tourists have gone back to their hotels. The joggers have finished their evening runs. What remains are the people who have nowhere else to be, and the people who choose to be nowhere else. Cassandra Rivera falls into neither category. She is simply walking home from her 3rd job of the day, a night cleaning shift at an office building on 42nd Street, her hands still smelling of industrial bleach and pine-scented solvent no amount of hand washing can remove. She is 29 years old but looks like someone has lived her entire life twice. Her hair is dark, pulled back in a braid so tight it pulls the skin at her temples. Her eyes are brown, the color of coffee left too long in the pot, and they have seen things that rob a person of innocence. She wears a grey cleaning uniform that has faded to the color of old ash, and her work sneakers are held together on the left side with duct tape wrapped so many times it has become hard and cracking. Every muscle in her body aches in a way that has become so familiar she would not recognize what it felt like to be free of pain. She is counting. That is what she does when she walks. She counts her heartbeats and her breaths and the bills that wait for her at home. $18.40 sits in her checking account. $34 in her purse. 16 days until her rent is due and $1,250 she does not have. She has been doing this math for 6 weeks and the answer never changes. The crying stops her. It is not loud. It is the kind of crying a child does when he has learned that tears will not bring relief, when he has cried so long that his body has learned to do it quietly, almost as a reflex. Near the fountain, where the water is illuminated by underwater lights that make it look like liquid emerald, a small boy stands alone. He cannot be older than 7. His clothes are expensive: navy shorts with a silk crease, a white polo shirt with a tiny embroidered horse on the chest, sneakers that probably cost more than everything Cassandra is wearing combined. His knee is bleeding, the skin torn in the way that happens when children fall on hard stone, and his right jeans leg is ripped from the calf down. No one is with him. Cassandra's entire body tightens. She has a son. She knows the weight of the terror that descends when a child is alone in the dark. She moves to him without thinking. "Where is your mom, sweetheart?" Her voice is gentle, the way voices become when they speak to hurt things. The boy looks up at her with eyes so dark they seem to absorb light. He points toward the trees, toward a bench where a woman has collapsed backward, her body at an angle that is all wrong. Her mouth is open. Her hand is pressed against her chest. Cassandra runs. The woman is elderly, maybe 70, maybe older, her skin the color of old paper, her white hair pinned up with silver combs. She is wearing a dress that costs more money than Cassandra has ever held in her hands. Her hand against her chest is trembling. "I am here," Cassandra says, and she kneels beside the bench, rain beginning to fall now, light at first, then steady. "I am right here." "What is your name?" "Maria," the woman gasps. "Medication." "In my purse." Cassandra finds the purse, opens it, finds a small brown bottle. Nitroglycerine. She has worked in enough places and seen enough things to know what this means. She places a tablet under the woman's tongue. "Stay with me. Help is coming." She calls 911. The operator's voice is mechanical, far away, unreal. She gives the location. She describes the symptoms. She holds Maria's hand and talks to her about nothing, about the rain, about how the park looks different at night, about how tomorrow the sky will be clear. She does not know if any of this is true. She does not know if Maria will still be breathing tomorrow. She knows only that her hand is in Cassandra's and that someone has to hold on. The ambulance arrives 8 minutes later. Paramedics move around them like they have done this 1,000 times, because they have. They load Maria onto a stretcher. One of them turns to Cassandra. "Are you family?" "No," Cassandra says. "Just someone who was walking by. We're taking her to St. Mary's. Cardiac event. She's going to need blood. Rare type, AB negative." Cassandra follows them to the hospital. She brings Oliver with her, his small hand in hers. His crying finally stopped because sometimes when one person is in crisis, children understand that it is their turn to be strong. At St. Mary's, she sits in a waiting room under fluorescent lights that drain all color from the world. A nurse moves past her, fast, urgent. A doctor follows. Cassandra hears the words through the walls, "No AB negative in inventory. 3 units in the city, all spoken for. We need to find donors." She stands up. She has not thought about this. She simply stands and walks to the nurse's station. "I am AB negative," she says. "Test me. Take what you need." The nurse's eyes widen slightly. "Are you sure?" "Donation takes about 30 minutes. You need to be healthy." Cassandra thinks about Oliver. She thinks about Maria's hand trembling against her chest. She thinks about the $10 she will have after she pays for the bus home and the $6 baby aspirin at the pharmacy for Oliver's fever that has not broken in 4 days. "Yes," she says. "I am sure." They take her back. They put a needle in her arm and draw blood, 2 pints, her own veins thin and dark beneath pale skin that shows the map of her own struggle. She is anemic, the technician tells her. She should eat more iron. She should rest. She should not exert herself. Cassandra nods and does not say anything because eating more iron requires money and resting requires a job that will let her leave, and exerting herself is the only way she keeps the lights on and her son fed. She refuses payment. She gives only her first name, because if there is payment to be received, it should go to someone who can use it. She asks for no recognition, no thank you, because that is not why she did it. When they release her, her head is light and her vision swims slightly at the edges. She walks back to the waiting room. Oliver is asleep on a chair with his head against the window. She buys him a candy bar from the vending machine with her last $5, the crinkle of the wrapper loud in the quiet room. That is when she sees him. The man enters through the double doors with the kind of presence that makes the air rearrange itself. He is tall, at least 6'1", his shoulders broad beneath an expensive black suit that probably costs more than Cassandra's monthly rent. His hair is dark, silvered at the temples in a way that suggests he is perhaps 45, maybe 50, but his face is one that will always look powerful regardless of age. He has a scar running from the outside of his right eye down to his cheekbone, thin but visible, the kind of scar that tells a story he will never tell. His eyes are the color of storm clouds right before rain, and they contain nothing soft. Behind him, 2 men follow in suits that match his inexpensive not in fit. The taller of the 2 has shoulders like a bull and a face that suggests he has used it to stop objects moving at high speed. The second is leaner, faster-looking, with intelligent eyes that miss nothing. The man with the scar approaches the nurse's station. His voice, when he speaks, is deep and solid like an oath. I am here about Maria Rossi. She was brought in by ambulance. Cardiac event. The nurse's face changes. She sits up straighter. Of course. She is stable. She received a blood transfusion. AB negative, which is rare. She is very fortunate. Her donor stepped forward without hesitation. The man's eyes move across the waiting room. They land on Cassandra. On Oliver. On the empty candy bar wrapper on the chair. His gaze lingers for 3 seconds, long enough for Cassandra to understand that he is cataloging details, filing them away. Then he turns back to the nurse. I want to speak with her donor, he says. I want to thank them personally. But by the time the nurse retrieves the information, Cassandra is already walking out of the hospital into the rain. Oliver's hand is in hers. The August air is still warm, still thick, but now it feels different. Charged. Like the moment before lightning strikes. She takes the subway home. She and Oliver live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens that is neither small enough to feel manageable nor large enough to feel like a home. There is a stain on the ceiling from the apartment above. There is a kitchen that holds no food. There is a bedroom where her son sleeps in a twin bed and she sleeps on a mattress on the floor because she sold the frame to pay for medicine. She is standing at the window, unable to sleep despite being unable to keep her eyes open, when she hears footsteps in the hallway. They stop outside her door. The knocking, when it comes, is slow and deliberate. 3 knocks. Not violent. Not threatening. Simply impossible to ignore. She opens the door to find Anthony Marchetti leaning against the wall across from her apartment. He is Rafael's nephew, though she does not know this yet. He is 28 years old and looks like someone who has never been told no. He wears a suit that probably costs more than she makes in a year, and on his left wrist is a Rolex that catches the hallway light like a promise of wealth she will never have. His smile, when he smiles at her, is the smile of a man accustomed to taking what he wants. I have been waiting for you, Cassandra, he says. We need to talk about your husband's debts. Rafael Rossi sits in his office on the 42nd floor of a building that bears no name, a building that does not officially exist. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, New York City stretches beneath him like a kingdom he has spent 30 years building and 20 years learning to hate. He is 56 years old, though his eyes carry the exhaustion of a man twice that age. His suit is charcoal, tailored in Milan, worth more than most people's cars. A scar runs from his left eye to his jawline, a permanent reminder of the night his own brother tried to kill him for information he refused to give. He does not look up when Sergio enters. His lieutenant, a man of 42 with a broken nose from a past he does not discuss, carries a manila folder. The folder is thin. Too thin for what it should contain. Sergio places it on the desk with the care of a man handling something dangerous. The Rivera woman, Sergio says. His voice is flat, stripped of emotion. She visited the federal courthouse again. Yesterday at 3 in the afternoon. Back entrance. Met with a prosecutor for 47 minutes. Rafael's hand does not move from the desk. His pen sits exactly where he placed it. His fingers are steady. Everything about him is steady except the muscle that tightens once in his jaw. The same prosecutor, he asks. Every time. James Chen. Federal Organized Crime Task Force. The office is silent except for the sound of rain beginning against the windows. It started suddenly, as September rain does in this city, not a warning but an arrival. The kind of rain that sounds like something ending. Sergio does not leave because Rafael has not dismissed him. In their world, a man stays until permission is granted to go. A man speaks only when silence is broken first. Sergio has worked for Rafael for 15 years, and in all that time, he has learned that his boss's silences are more dangerous than his words. Her son attends PS84, Sergio continues, because sometimes silence demands information to fill it. Second grade. Teacher named Mrs. Patterson. He has perfect attendance. No disciplinary issues. He draws pictures. Of what? Mostly dinosaurs. One drawing of a woman with red hair. That same woman. His mother. Rafael turns to face the window. Rain streaks the glass in diagonal lines. Below, the city moves without knowing that in this office, on this floor, a decision is being made that will determine whether a widow lives or dies, whether a child grows up with a mother or becomes an orphan like so many others in this world have become. Show me the courthouse photographs, Rafael says. Sergio opens the folder. The images are professional, surveillance stills taken from a distance that speaks of expensive equipment and trained operators. Cassandra Rivera in a dark coat, walking through a concrete corridor. Cassandra Rivera speaking with a man in a grey suit, her mouth moving, her hands gesturing. Cassandra Rivera's face turned away, climbing courthouse steps. What Rafael notices is her hands. In every photograph, her hands are trembling. She is afraid, Rafael says. It is not a question. Yes. Of Chen? Of the prosecutors? No. Sergio's voice drops. Of you. She is terrified you will discover what she is doing. The rain accelerates against the glass. In this moment, in this office suspended above the sleeping city, Rafael Rossi understands something that his men do not yet understand. He understands that fear like this, fear so profound it shows in trembling hands across courthouse photographs, is not the fear of betrayal. It is the fear of disappointing someone whose approval has become necessary to survival. He thinks of his mother. Maria Rossi, 78 years old, recovering in a private facility in Westchester, her blood type replaced by the blood of this woman who asked for nothing in return. His mother, who called him 3 days ago and asked if he had thanked her donor properly. Where is Cassandra now? He asks. Home. It is 1 in the morning. Her son is asleep. She is sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee she will not drink, looking at the same document she has been reviewing for 6 weeks. Rafael stands. He walks to the window and places his palm against the glass. It is cold. Everything in this world is cold once you understand how easily warmth can be taken away. Call off the surveillance, he says. Sergio does not move. In this world, you do not move until you understand an order. Tell me you did not hear me correctly, Rafael continues, and his voice is like thunder arriving across empty plains. Tell me something is wrong with your ears, because I know nothing is wrong with your mind. Understood, boss. The surveillance ends tonight. But? There is no but. There is only what I have said and what will happen because I said it. Sergio turns to leave. One more thing, Rafael says. My nephew Anthony. How long has he been in Las Vegas? 3 months, 2 weeks. Extend his assignment. Indefinitely. Tell him his uncle has decided he is too valuable to bring home right now. Tell him it is an honor. Tell him whatever keeps him breathing clean air 2,000 miles away from this city. Sergio nods. He understands now. He understands that Rafael has known about Anthony all along, has known about the threats in dark hallways and fists leaving bruises shaped like promises. Sergio has worked for Rafael for 15 years, and in all that time, he has never fully grasped that his boss is not a man who acts in anger. His boss is a man who acts in cold arithmetic, calculating decades into the future, moving pieces on a board the rest of the world cannot see. When Sergio reaches the door, Rafael speaks once more. And Sergio, when you call off the men watching Cassandra's building, make sure she knows it is happening. Not obviously. But make sure she knows. How do I do that? You figure it out. That is why I pay you. The door closes. The rain continues. Rafael Rossi stands alone in his office, 39 stories above a city that has no idea what is happening in the dark hours before dawn. Outside, the streets are empty except for the occasional black SUV moving through the rain, heading toward 4 different locations where 4 different men receive phone calls telling them their services are no longer required, their positions are being reassigned, their expertise is needed elsewhere. By 6 in the morning, when Cassandra Rivera opens her apartment door to retrieve the newspaper and finds no car parked across the street, no man in a dark suit reading a newspaper in the rain, she understands something without understanding it fully. The protection has not been withdrawn. It has only become invisible. She sits at her kitchen table, the same coffee still untouched, and for the first time in 2 months, she allows herself to cry. Oliver sleeps in the next room, his drawings of dinosaurs and his mother pinned to the refrigerator like proof that goodness still exists somewhere in the world. What she does not know is that Rafael Rossi is, at that exact moment, standing in his mother's hospital room in Westchester, holding her hand as she sleeps. His mother, who asked him 2 weeks ago if he had ever considered that the things people hide are often the things they are trying to protect, not the things they are trying to destroy. His mother, who has more wisdom than all of his empire combined, and who taught him long ago that some betrayals are actually the deepest loyalties dressed in clothing the world does not recognize. The November rain hammers against the windows of Westchester Elementary School, cold and relentless, turning the parking lot into a mirror of gray sky and darker possibilities. At 4:15 in the afternoon, Cassandra Rivera sits in the hallway outside Mrs. Patterson's classroom, her hands folded in her lap, waiting for Oliver's parent-teacher conference. She has worn her good blouse, the navy one without the stain near the collar, and she has rehearsed what she will say about his reading level and his kindness toward other children and how he still draws pictures of dinosaurs even though he is 7 years old and most boys his age have moved on to other things. She does not know that Margaret Harrington has just pulled into the parking lot with 2 other women from the country club, their heels clicking against the wet pavement like a countdown clock. She does not know that Anthony Marchetti is sitting in Margaret's car, rage burning in his chest like a fever, because his uncle Rafael transferred him out of state 3 months ago on some vague pretext about family business in Miami, and he has just learned, through channels he should not have access to, that a certain young woman has been visiting the district attorney's office repeatedly, and he has done the mathematics in his head and arrived at a conclusion that is partially correct and catastrophically incomplete. Margaret Harrington is 53 years old but carries herself like a woman who has never aged, whose face has been maintained through expensive procedures and careful positioning in good light. Her hair is platinum blonde, cut in a style that costs more than Cassandra earns in 2 weeks, and her coat is white cashmere that falls to her knees like the robes of someone accustomed to deference. She walks into the school hallway with the certainty of someone who has always belonged in these spaces, and when she sees Cassandra sitting alone on the bench, something in her expression tightens into a smile that has nothing to do with warmth. The two women behind her are younger, softer, followers who feed on the scraps of Margaret's cruelty like it is currency. Margaret stops directly in front of the bench, and her voice carries down the hallway like a blade through quiet air. "Cassandra! How absolutely wonderful to see you here." Margaret's tone is honey-poisoned, each word selected for maximum damage. "I have been meaning to ask you something that has been on my mind. How is your work with the district attorney going? I hear you have been visiting the courthouse quite frequently. Such an unusual hobby for someone in your situation. Does Rafael know about these little visits of yours?" The hallway holds its breath. Other parents turn to stare. A teacher passes by and slows her pace, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Cassandra's stomach drops like something heavy through deep water. She stands, her voice shaking but holding together like a structure that knows it is about to collapse. "You do not know what you are talking about." Her words are barely loud enough to carry, a whisper trying to be armor. Anthony Marchetti emerges from around the corner with the timing of something rehearsed, his face arranged into a smirk that shows all his teeth. He is 31 years old, with Rafael's dark eyes but none of Rafael's control, a man whose power comes entirely from his last name and whose rage comes from the understanding that his last name might not be enough much longer. He walks toward her with the confidence of someone who has never been told no, and when he speaks, his voice drips with a certainty that makes Cassandra's blood crystallize in her veins. Uncle Rafael is going to be very disappointed when he finds out his charity case is a rat. He reaches for her arm, his hand closing around her wrist like a trap snapping shut. His fingers dig into her skin, and she feels the bones of her wrist compress under pressure that is just shy of breaking. "You think you can work against this family? You think you matter enough for that?" She pulls. His grip tightens. The hallway is watching now, other parents frozen in their chairs, a teacher stepping forward and then stepping back because intervention is too dangerous, because everyone in this city understands that some things are not their business. Cassandra twists her body away, feeling the fabric of her good blouse tear at the shoulder seam, and then she is moving, her survival instinct overriding everything else, and she breaks free from his grip and runs toward the exit, her footsteps echoing on linoleum that suddenly seems to stretch forever. Margaret follows at a walk, unhurried, her phone already raised to record as Anthony chases Cassandra through the exit and into the parking lot where the rain is waiting like a punishment. Cassandra's car is 20 yards away, a battered silver Honda with a check engine light that has been on for 6 months. She fumbles for her keys, her hand shaking so violently that she nearly drops them into a puddle, and she can feel Anthony closing the distance behind her, his breathing loud and excited like a predator that has cornered something breakable. The rain soaks through her coat. Her mascara runs. She reaches her car and spins to face him, and for a moment they are standing 10 feet apart, breathing hard in the downpour, and the world narrows to just these two people and the water falling between them. Anthony advances, step by step, smiling. "You made a mistake," he says. "You made several mistakes. The biggest one was thinking this would ever end anyway except badly for you." He grabs her again, this time more violently, pinning her against her car, his hand closing over her mouth, and she cannot scream because his palm is pressing against her lips so hard she tastes blood, and she is thinking of Oliver inside waiting for her, thinking of Margaret filming everything, thinking that she has destroyed everything without saving anyone, when a voice cuts through the rain like a blade of pure cold. "Let her go." Rafael Rossi stands 20 feet away, his suit jacket soaked dark, his hair plastered to his forehead, and even from this distance, even through the rain and the chaos, his voice carries the weight of something absolute. Anthony turns, still holding Cassandra, and tries to smile as if this is something that can be smiled through, as if his uncle's arrival is a complication rather than a termination. "Uncle Rafael, I said let her go." Rafael's voice does not raise. It does not need to. 12 men in black suits are moving into position around the parking lot, emerging from black SUVs that arrived at 6:22 with a precision that suggests they had been circling, waiting for a signal. Anthony releases Cassandra, and she staggers forward, gasping, choking on blood and rain. Rafael steadies her with one hand while his eyes remain fixed on his nephew. "Tell me the truth," he says to her, and his voice is gentler now, though gentleness from him carries its own kind of danger, like a knife offered handle first. "Everything." Cassandra's words spill out like a confession, like a breaking. She stands in the rain and tells him about the federal case, about the 6 other women that Anthony assaulted, about the corrupt police officers who buried the reports in filing cabinets and silence, about the 3 months she has spent gathering evidence, meeting with prosecutors, building something that could destroy him without destroying Rafael. She tells him that she was not betraying him, that every visit to that courthouse was an attempt to protect other women without shattering his family in the process, and when she finishes speaking, Rafael is quiet for so long that the only sound is the rain and the distant crying of a siren moving through the city. Then he nods, a single movement, and Sergio steps forward and makes one phone call, and in the space between one breath and the next, the entire machinery of federal law enforcement mobilizes. FBI agents arrive at the school at 6:47, their cars coming in like wolves answering a call, and they arrest Anthony Marchetti on 6 counts of aggravated assault, witness intimidation, and conspiracy with corrupt police officers. He screams as they cuff him, his voice cracking, begging, "Uncle Rafael, please, I am family, I am blood." Rafael's response is ice cutting through fire. "You stop being family the moment you put your hands on her." They drag Anthony away, his screams fading into the November night, and then Rafael turns his attention to Margaret Harrington, who is still standing in the parking lot with her phone in her hand, her white coat now grey with rain, her expression finally showing something other than cruelty. It shows fear. Rafael makes 3 calls over the course of the next 3 hours. By 9 o'clock, the IRS has opened an audit into her charity foundation, discovering $2.3 million in embezzled funds. By midnight, society pages have leaked photographs of her affair with a married senator whose wife is already composing her statement to the press. By dawn, her husband has filed for divorce and frozen every account she can access. When Margaret calls Rafael at 7 in the morning, her voice is fractured, desperate. "You cannot do this to me. I have connections, I have influence." Rafael interrupts with the gentleness of someone delivering a diagnosis. "You threatened someone under my protection. You involved a child. You believed yourself untouchable. I am about to teach you otherwise." Federal agents arrive at her penthouse at 8:15. Fraud charges. Conspiracy. Wire fraud spanning 15 years. They arrest Margaret Harrington in her silk robe on the building's front steps, cameras flashing, neighbors watching from behind their windows, as the society queen is placed into an FBI car, her mascara running, her screams echoing through the lobby about lawyers and connections that no longer exist. Rafael ensures that she faces 40 years in federal prison, every asset seized, every friend dissolving like salt in water, her name becoming synonymous with scandal and destruction. The woman who wielded cruelty as currency learns its exchange rate when the market collapses. The 15 black limousines lined the street like a corridor of power, their engines idling in the grey morning light, their windows tinted so dark that the world inside remained invisible. Cassandra stood at her apartment window on the 3rd floor, her hand pressed against the cold glass, Oliver beside her in his Spider-Man pajamas, eyes wide as saucers. The limousine stretched for an entire block. Neighbors emerged onto fire escapes. A woman across the street stood frozen with a coffee cup halfway to her lips. This was not how things happened in neighborhoods where rent was always late and the landlord always angry. A knock. Soft, deliberate. Cassandra's heart stopped. She had not heard from Rafael in 26 hours. Since the rain. Since Margaret Harrington had been placed into that FBI car with mascara running down her face like a map of her own destruction. She opened the door to find Sergio, Rafael's oldest lieutenant, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. "Miss Rivera," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had seen things that broke other men into smaller pieces. "If you would come downstairs, please." She looked at Oliver. Oliver looked at the limousines through the window. She dressed him quickly, his good jacket, the one without holes in the pockets, and they descended the stairs together, her hand trembling slightly as it held his. The morning air bit cold against her skin. November in New York. The season of loss and endings and sometimes, if you were lucky, beginnings. Rafael stood beside the first limousine in a black suit cut so perfectly it seemed to reshape the very air around him. His hair was dark except for silver threading at the temples like frost on branches. He held a single envelope, cream-colored, expensive, sealed with wax the color of old blood. When he saw Cassandra, something shifted in his expression. His men noticed immediately. Enzo nudged Sergio and whispered something inaudible but unmistakable in its meaning. The boss had changed. Not in years, not in decades, but in this single moment, standing in a November morning on a street where children played unsupervised and mothers worked double shifts and hope was a currency nobody could afford. Rafael extended the envelope. "What is this?" Cassandra asked, not moving to take it. "Open it," he said. Inside were keys, solid, real keys that weighed like promises in her palm. A deed to a 3-bedroom house in Forest Hills, neighborhood she had driven through once and thought she was trespassing just by looking. The house was paid in full. Completely. Not a mortgage, not a loan, not a payment plan that would stretch into her bones and marrow. Owned outright. Beneath the deed was a trust fund statement, $500,000 for Oliver's education. His name was already on it. She saw his name typed in official letters and felt something break open inside her chest. And then the appointment letter, Cassandra Rivera, Community Outreach Director, Hospital Board of Directors, effective immediately. A salary. Health insurance. A position that did not exist yesterday but existed now because Rafael Rossi had decided it should. And then the handwritten note. The handwriting was shaky, the letters uneven, the hand of someone recovering strength after long illness. "Thank you for saving my life and for showing my son that honor still exists. Please have dinner with us. Maria." Cassandra could not speak. The words had disappeared somewhere between her lungs and her throat. She looked at Rafael. His eyes were exactly the color of storm clouds, and in them she saw something she had not expected to survive long enough to witness: gentleness. "I cannot accept this," she whispered. "It is too much." Enzo touched Sergio's arm. In 15 years of working for Rafael Rossi, they had never heard him speak the way he was about to speak. Rafael moved closer. Not threatening. The opposite of threatening. The way a man soothed a wounded animal, careful and deliberate. "You saved my mother when you had nothing in your pocket but $34. You built a case against my nephew when I might have killed you for betrayal. You protected other women while thinking I suspected you of working against me. You stood still under weight that would have crushed anyone else into dust." He paused. The rain from the night before still dripped from the edges of the fire escapes. "This is not charity, Cassandra. This is what you earned." She touched his hand. The first time their skin had made contact voluntarily, without crisis or desperation or fear standing between them. His hand was warm. His fingers were calloused from handling things heavier than paper or flesh. "What happens now?" she asked. Rafael looked at her for a long moment. Long enough that Sergio and Enzo exchanged glances. Long enough that neighbors stopped watching and just stood frozen, witnessing something that did not belong to their world but had arrived anyway. "Now you rebuild your life," Rafael said quietly. "And when you are ready, when you stand as my equal and not as someone I rescued, we talk about what comes next." He opened the first limousine door. The interior was leather and wooden silence. Oliver ran out of the building then, still in his Spider-Man pajamas, his eyes taking in the impossible sight of 15 black limousines on his street. He stopped dead. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Rafael knelt to his level, his expensive suit creasing at the knee, his expensive watch catching the gray light. "Hello, Oliver. Do you like cars?" Oliver nodded, speechless, the way children nod when they are trying to be brave. "Come then," Rafael said. "We have 15 to choose from." The three of them rode together to the house in Forest Hills. Oliver sat between them, asking questions that only a 7-year-old could ask without shame. Is this car real? Does it fly? Will it ever need to stop? Cassandra looked out the window at New York sliding past them, the city she had been drowning in for so long, and for the first time in years, maybe forever, she was not counting money. She was not calculating what remained or what was missing or what price she would have to pay to stay alive another month. When they pulled up to the house, she understood why Rafael had chosen it. It was not a mansion. It was not trying to announce itself as important. It was a home. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with light pouring through east-facing windows, a backyard with space for a child to run. And standing on the front porch in a yellow dress, recovered and standing tall, was Maria Rossi. She embraced Cassandra without words, held her with the strength of someone who had been given a second chance at life and knew its weight down to her bones. Oliver ran to explore the backyard. Maria whispered in Cassandra's ear, "My son nearly lost the most important thing he has ever found because he was afraid of trust. Do not let him make that mistake twice." 6 months later, in spring, when the world had begun to remember that green existed and that hope could be something other than a lie people told themselves to stay functional, Cassandra sat on the porch of that house with Rafael beside her. She had completed her nursing degree. She worked now at the hospital, helping women who came in with bruises that matched her old bruises, eyes that carried the same shattered look hers had carried. She advocated for them. She testified for them. She became the person she had needed in that poker room on the night everything changed. Oliver played in the backyard with Maria, who had become his grandmother not through blood but through choice and presence and the small gestures of love, reading him stories at night, braiding his hair on Sunday afternoons, teaching him recipes in the kitchen. Rafael arrived for dinner on Friday nights now. It had become their routine. Slow. Careful. Like rebuilding something precious from broken pieces. Tonight was different. Cassandra had something to say, and Rafael knew it from the way her hands trembled slightly as she held her tea, the way her eyes kept finding his and then looking away. "I am ready," she said. "Ready for what?" Rafael asked, though his voice suggested he knew. "To talk about what comes next. You said when I stood as your equal. I have rebuilt my life. I am not the desperate widow you found bleeding in your poker room. I am not someone you saved. I am someone who saved herself, with your help. Those are different things." Rafael reached across and took her hand. His hand covered hers completely. "I never saw you as someone I saved. I saw someone who saved my mother and expected nothing. Someone who chose justice over safety. Someone who taught me that not everyone betrays." Oliver called from the yard then, his voice carrying the pure joy of a child who had learned that safety was not temporary. "Mom, Nonna Maria says dinner is ready." They walked inside together, the 4 of them, Cassandra, Oliver, Rafael, and Maria, and sat down to a table that had become sacred through repetition and presence. The kind of family that is not born but chosen, piece by piece, moment by moment, a family forged not in blood but in the decision to stay when staying was difficult. Family is not always bound by blood, but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. Cassandra Rivera had $34 in her pocket and bruises on her throat when she stumbled into Rafael Rossi's world. She donated blood to save his mother without knowing who they were. 24 hours later, 15 limousines arrived, but what really changed her life was not the money or the house or the position at the hospital. It was finding people who chose to stay. If this story moved you, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that family is built by those who choose to stay. Subscribe because tomorrow we bring you another story about love, power, and the choices that define us. The question is not whether you deserve to be saved, but whether you have the courage to save yourself. Thank you for watching. We wish all of you good health, joy, and days filled with peace. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. We will see you again in the next video.